New Year's resolutions, again, they're sort of a double-edged sword. But with quitting drinking or anything else, I find that the hardest part is drawing a line in the sand, picking a start date that you don't continually say, oh, I'll start on Monday. Just begin. And anything that helps you begin is great with an area of your life you feel will improve you for the new year. Find some people who are doing the same thing and start small.
You're listening to Make Some Noise podcast, episode number 571 with guest Casey Davidson McGuire. Welcome to Make Some Noise podcast, your guide for strategies, tools, and insight to empower yourself. I'm your host, Andrea Owen, global speaker, entrepreneur, life coach since 2007, and author of 3 books that have been translated into 18 languages and are available in 22 countries. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or a lesson that will help you maximize unshakable confidence, master resilience, and make some noise in your life. You ready? Let's go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. Holiday season is upon us, and I have someone on today to talk about habits. More specifically, we do spend a decent time talking about quitting drinking. If that is your thing, even if you are a sober person, or maybe you're just thinking about quitting for January, this is going to be your episode, or the episode that you send to somebody who's maybe been tossing it around. You know, just maybe a little concerned, or maybe not concerned, just sober curious is the term that we're using these days. Sober curious. Anyway, I'm going to tell you about Casey in just a minute. And I wanted to let you know that I have one opening right now for coaching. If anybody's looking for support, maybe you need to learn how to set some boundaries. Maybe you want to work on your mindset. 2024 is going to be your year. Maybe you need to get organized. Maybe you want more self-confidence. Head on over to andreaowen.com/links. That's where all the links are. It's at one of the top ones to go to my coaching page and fill out an application. I also do Daring Way, specifically the curriculum where I'm certified in Brene Brown's work around shame resilience. It's deeper work. It is a longer, more intensive package. But that's also over on my website too. That's actually at andreaowen.com/coaching. So I can take either one of those clients. I only have space for one lucky lady. And if that's you, head on over to andreaowen.com/links or andreaowen.com/coaching. All right, let me tell you today about our guest. Casey McGuire Davidson is a life and sobriety coach and the host of the top 100 mental health podcast, the Hello Someday podcast for sober, curious women. As an ex-red wine girl who spent 20 years climbing the corporate ladder while holding on tightly to her love of wine, Casey's passionate about helping busy women stop drinking and create the lives they love without alcohol. Her work has been featured in the New York Times, NBC News, and over 70 sobriety, motherhood, mental health, and wellness podcasts and publications. So without further ado, here is Casey. Casey, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm excited to be here because I was telling my audience, I think it was in last week's episode, that I'm not the greatest at making sure I do like a New Year, New You podcast episode. Tackle your goals. I just bring on people that I'm interested in learning more about and that I think my audience is going to be interested in learning more about. And it just happened to be that we've connected in the new year where you help people usually quit drinking. But I think, as we talked about, we're going to use that as an example. So I don't want people to turn off the show if they don't struggle with their drinking or they're already sober. I think there's definitely going to be really good information in here for everyone. So let's start from the beginning. And a lot of people in the new year use that and they legitimately feel like, okay, new fresh start. And they feel inspired and motivated to get quote unquote healthier, especially after the holidays.
Yeah.
So, but it can be sort of a lofty and too broad of a term, very, very general. So can you talk about that a little bit? And what are some more specific, I don't know if I should use the word resolutions, but I will, that people can focus on to improve their health?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that all of us, have been conditioned since we were little. We've talked about this on my show, that there are all these things that women need to do to improve themselves, right?
Yeah.
Like I know for a decade when I was younger, it was like get in shape, lose weight, grow my hair out, stop biting my nails, because that's just me. And then 4 years, stop drinking or drink less, which was the goal, get a handle on it. And it's tempting to do that. But I'm a big fan of the best practices in habit and behavior change. And I don't know if you know James Clear, but I love his book, Atomic Habits. And he really talks about the 1% improvement every day and focusing on a single thing and then incrementally adding other goals, because we tend to go all in. We're like, all right, I'm not going to drink. I'm going to do Whole30. I'm going to do workout 7 days a week and not eat XYZ. And it's too hard. So some of the the top New Year's resolution that people always make is like, this year, I'm going to be healthier. And that's a pretty general goal. It is way more effective to have a goal that's smart, right? Measurable, where you can decide a time period. So, for example, people make resolutions around starting a gratitude practice or focusing on better sleep, spending more time outdoors, increasing movement, or stopping drinking or taking a break. Dry January has actually become huge in the United States. 1 in 5 American adults did it last year.
Wow.
Which is a great time to see how good you feel without alcohol. The most recent studies I've read is that 30% of American adults are trying to drink less this year. Wow. So it's a big thing. And the cool thing is dry January is a trend. And if you stop that one thing, meaning cut out alcohol for 31 days, you will sleep better. You will have more energy. Your skin will look better. Your face will be less bloated, all those things. So there are knock-on effects from it. So what I would encourage people to do, say you're not interested in dry January, is to, for your New Year's resolution, pick one thing.
Yeah.
And then as you sort of implement that into your routine, add more.
I love that. One of the things that I look for when I'm working with a client, especially if it's a new client and they've filled out the intake paperwork and I ask, like, what do you want your primary focus to be? What do you want more of? What do you want less of? And they have a long list of things. Or sometimes if we reach the end of the session and I ask them, what do you want to be held accountable for? And they'll say something like, they're not working out at all. Like, I want to work out 5 days a week. I stop them because, and it sort of sounds counterintuitive to what I do as a life coach and as the consummate hype girl. I'm all for big, lofty goals. And at the same time, I also want to set you up for success. So we need to be realistic. And I also work with, and I'm sure you do too, a lot of really high achievers who are used to getting their value and worth from checking off those boxes and being productive and like doing all the things. And that does not stop when it comes to our resolutions and wanting to change our life.
Oh, no. I mean, I work with, as you said, a lot of high achieving women, and we're multitaskers and we're problem solvers, and we want to go all in. We have a long list of things we want to accomplish. And the problem with that is that life happens. So you set all these goals and suddenly you have a business trip or your kids get sick or something else happens and you can't do everything. And therefore you're like, I've broken my streak. I'm going to give it all up. Yeah. It's impossible. And so if you take things in smaller chunks, working on one behavior and then another behavior at a time, you are much more likely to be successful.
What do you think are the best practices that can keep people going after the kind of like the honeymoon phase wears off of a resolution or a goal? Because I mean, I personally have had so many moments where I've been excited to start and then, I kind of blame my ADHD as part of it, but I think it happens to everyone, no matter how your brain works. So what advice do you have for those people?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll use the example of taking a break from drinking because that's what I do,
Mm-hmm.
but it really applies to anything you're going to do. So, stating your implementation intention is really powerful. And all that means is a fancy way of saying telling someone what your specific goal is. And in a perfect world, you would tell lots of people.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, but stating how you are going to do it. So, for example, when I stopped drinking, I was a red wine girl. I drank 365 nights a year unless I was trying not to. So there was no one who was not going to notice that I had stopped drinking. You know, they might think I'm pregnant or something, but they weren't not going to notice. So I told my husband, my workout group, my coworkers, my friends that I was doing a 100-day challenge of no alcohol for 100 days. Now, that was specific. It was widely known to hold me accountable. Now, I'd tried that before and never made it more than 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
So when you add in, okay, there's motivation, there's willpower, those only last so long. There's telling people, so accountability. And then you have to look at your physical and your social environment. So one of the most powerful things is the environment you're in, whether you have a goal of meditating or running or getting better sleep or whatever it is. So you don't have to get rid of your family and friends who might not support you in taking a break from drinking or training for a marathon or something small like a gratitude practice. But it is incredibly helpful to supplement your world with people where the behavior you're trying to implement is the behavior that's celebrated. For example, if your goal was to start running, you probably would log on to some blogs, print out a training plan.
That's my favorite part.
Yeah, right? Like preparing.
Yeah.
I'm a vision board girl. So I like put up all the quotes to keep it top of mind. That actually works because every morning or twice a day, you will be reminded of what your goal is. And it's harder for you to get off track. Physical environment, like with not drinking, try to get your alcohol of choice out of your house. Try to, when you normally drink, get a substitute beverage, get something else. A big challenge too is like we all have these cue craving response reward cycles. So a cue to drink or eat junk food or, do whatever it is you want to shift, not meditate. It can be time of day. It can be a stress trigger. It can be driving a certain place. So you want to shift the cues and also implement a new reward. And eventually that reward is going to be the thing you change.
Okay. Just to keep it new and fresh.
Well, and also clearly what you've been doing has been working for you in some way, even if you want to change it. And you've gotten into a pattern where you have a cue, and it could be anything in your environment that you are used to having a certain reward. Okay. So instead
that kind of reward. I thought you meant like the celebration when you've done the thing that you wanted to do.
No, it's actually way more important to have daily rewards. So in quitting drinking, I call them sober treats. But essentially, it's really important to plan out your rewards that support your new objectives. So instead of going out for cocktails on Friday night, maybe you get a pedicure or a massage. Instead of going for a boozy dinner, maybe you have brunch and yoga with a girlfriend. Maybe you binge on a show or read books at night instead of having what I had, a bottle of wine on my couch with a TV show I may or may not remember. You can do that with anything you want to do. And it's a great way to change your habits, but it's much more powerful than just removing a behavior to actually get something in its place that is also enjoyable.
Yes, that you still have that reward stuff going off in your brain, which is important. I'm curious, like, this is kind of switching gears a little bit, but still on topic. In terms of like dry January specifically, because I remember the first time that a friend of mine, I called my friend who'd actually been in recovery for a long time. And I told her, I think I have a problem and I want to just, look into this whole quitting drinking thing, this myth that I hear about that people can do. And she said, well, just quit for 30 days and see what happens. And it was one of the most difficult things just mentally that I had ever done. So I'm curious, when you take people along the journey of Dry January, are there specific things because it's not just about the quitting drinking and
no.
Are there specific things that you can share with us that kind of give us a peek behind the curtain with that program of that you ask people to look for as they're a few days in, or even just like the first day?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the challenges with alcohol specifically is that it's become a coping mechanism. Mm-hmm. If you look around for working women, for mothers, as sort of a metaphor for empowerment, what you drink can signify that. And it's also addictive. People don't talk about that. The substance is actually addictive. So when you decide to take a period of time away from alcohol, you will go into withdrawal in the same way you do when you're smoking. So you feel worse than before you feel better. And I think that I love a 30-day goal to start, because for a lot of people, it is a bridge too far to think about anything else. At the same time, I really prefer, like with my clients and people who are interested, suggesting a 100-day goal, because in my mind, it's sort of the difference between taking a commuter flight. So you're going from like DC to New York. You don't bring a snack. You don't recline your chair. You're just waiting for it to be over. Yeah. Versus, for example, flying cross country, where you sort of prepare for how you're going to enjoy it. Maybe you bring a book or you download a movie, all those things. So basically, you have to settle in and figure out how to actually enjoy this new period of time in this behavior. So if you're, for example, taking a 30-day break from alcohol, you feel a little bit worse in the first 2 weeks. And then if you're just planning on a 30-day break, you're essentially counting down the time till you can drink again, right? Mm-hmm. So drinking is the reward for not drinking. It is much more powerful to approach this with curiosity and excitement and say, I wonder how good I might feel with getting this substance out of my body for a longer period of time. I wonder if I'll sleep better, if I'll have less anxiety, what new habits I might develop. The other thing you asked what to look for is, I always ask women, what do you not have to think about when you drink? And it may be your job. It may be tension in your home. It may be difficulties with your kids and not knowing how to cope with them. That's sort of the underlying problems. And then you need to figure out a different way to address it and healthier coping mechanisms. It's not always easy, but it is better.
Yes. There's so many, a couple of those things that I did not do. When I did my 30 days, I did not enter it with excitement. I entered it as this feels like a punishment, but also as I often have, like delusional confidence that I could do it. Yeah. And I'm like, this isn't going to be that hard. I lasted 6 days.
Oh,
and
okay.
I'm sure that you have, like materials and things like that for people that don't make it, for how to kind of like enter that with curiosity and kind of coach themselves, or maybe you coach them. But the way I talk about that, the last part that you said is, many times we use alcohol to quote unquote take the edge off. And I wrote about this a long time ago, maybe in one of my books, and said like, sometimes we need to look at what the edge is.
Yes.
That we're trying to take off in the first place, because it's usually something that's just an inevitable part of life that we need to learn how to cope with.
Yeah.
And also have compassion for yourself, because no one probably taught you how to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to learn.
And I think, absolutely. I mean, it's a huge habit change. We are in the habit of drinking both as a way to take the edge off, but also it's a behavioral change. And there's so much fear tied to like, will I lose all my friends? Will my partner like me? Will I be boring? I actually thought that I would have negative career consequences from stopping drinking, which is when I look back insane, I would drink too much at a business dinner and trip on my way back to the hotel. But I was worried if I didn't drink that my boss would be like, what's wrong with her?
Yeah. Well, yes, I want to touch on that. We have to take a quick ad break, but I want to say something to that when we come back. So we'll be right back. Shopify's already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point of sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. With Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers inline and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. Get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone, transform your tablet into a point of sale system, or use Shopify's POS Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/noise, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/noise to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/noise. Fast forward to the end of 2024 and think about your goals. What can you do right now to give yourself the best chance of succeeding? If you want to learn a new language, you absolutely should get Babbel. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are handcrafted by over 200 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babbel's designed by real people for real conversations. Studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and others continue to prove Babbel is better. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college. Now it's so easy to speak simple conversation phrases with the guy that takes care of my lawn without having to consult language apps. Here's a special limited time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/noise. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/noise, spelled BABBEL.com/noise. Rules and restrictions may apply. Okay, you were talking about the feeling like you were having negative consequences. I've actually coached a couple of women over the years who were in, for instance, a sales job where a lot of the culture in sales is around drinking, to take their clients out for fancy dinners and fancy drinks. And so I say all that because it's a reasonable fear. And especially in a country that's obsessed with alcohol.
Yeah.
I think we're starting to be a little bit less obsessed with it, thanks to this wave of, people not drinking either at all or as much anymore. But I think it's a reasonable fear. And I say all that for people listening because I could not imagine my life without alcohol. It felt like trying to imagine my life decapitated or something like just impossible. Like how would this even work? How does one go on a boat or go camping or go to a pool party and not drink? Like it just, it felt like learning going to a different planet. I was going to say learning another language. Like, no, that felt easier. It felt like going to another planet and living there. So I think everyone's fear is reasonable if they think like, I can't imagine my life without alcohol.
Oh, it's completely legitimate. And there are a few things that I love that are shifting. Number one, the younger generations, so Gen Z and millennials, are really driving the sober curious movement. And it is significant. They are drinking less than their parents and their grandparents did at the same age. And I could do a whole conversation on why that is.
I'm curious if you could touch on it, because that was my next question. Like, why do you think that more and more people are interested in making the decision to either not drink or drink a lot less?
A couple things. There has been so much more information that's come out just in the last 6 years about the negative health impacts of alcohol. Gen Z and millennials specifically are very concerned about mental health, and they're much more informed and open about it than we were. I'm a Gen Xer.
Same.
So the link to anxiety is real. The other thing is, I think with the advent of social media and videos and all that stuff, shockingly, they don't think binge drinking is that attractive. And I say that with sarcasm, right? Slurring, getting glassy eyed. They're very worried about their image, and not because they're vain, because they've seen the impact of how they behave or how someone behaves actually having a real impact on their life. And so they're very concerned about that. The third thing is they're much more concerned with careers and health and wellness. And I know that sounds funny, but I think the pressure on those younger generations is more than we experienced at Gen X or certainly baby boomers. So those are some of the factors. But the reason I love that, other than there's no longer as much of a stigma of saying, oh, I don't drink that much, or I'm curious about not drinking at all, and sort of going back and forth with it, is it's really driven a significant change in the alcohol industry. Now, the alcohol industry hates the sober curious movement because one of the only growing segments of alcohol growth is non-alcoholic beverages. And you will notice that in that my favorite non-alcoholic beer, Athletic Brewing Company, is a $4 billion business in 4 years. It's insane.
They're not even one of the big ones.
No. And so Guinness has a non-alcoholic stout. Corona has a non-alcoholic
I haven't
version.
tried that yet. I'm almost afraid because Corona was my favorite.
Yeah. Well, so I was a red wine girl, and I have tried non-alcoholic red wine couple of times. First of all, it's terrible, right?
I've had a champagne that was just kind of okay, but it's I'd rather have like the sparkling cider. What is it? Martinelli's?
Yeah.
Full of sugar. Delicious.
It's getting better. There are a lot of good options out there. Like Groovy has an incredible non-alcoholic. They call it a no secco, and a bubbly rosé. But if you go to restaurants and bars, they have 0 proof cocktail menus now. So those are things that I like. And the other thing I would say is, in terms of telling people what you're doing, I always like to phrase it as a health and wellness choice, a lifestyle choice similar to deciding to be a vegetarian. Because if you say, oh, I've decided to take a break from drinking to ease, see if I have less anxiety or sleep better or exercise more, have more energy, everybody suddenly loves to talk about themselves and like that one time that they ran a half marathon or did a triathlon, or like, oh my God, I've got a Peloton.
Like their CrossFit gym. Yeah.
It's hysterical the degree to which they will take that and talk about themselves.
Oh, I'm one of those people too. Like completely.
You
guilty.
are?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Especially, I mean, I'm not on my Peloton as much as I used to be, but yeah, since 2019. I was one of them.
Do you feel like, just looking around, that things have shifted since you gave up alcohol in terms of the reaction to it?
Massively. And it hasn't been that long. It's only been 12 years that I've been sober, which in the grand scheme of things isn't that long. But I think that I got sober at the tail end of the era of the stigma still being kind of a big deal. I think it's slightly different too if someone like me, and I think this conversation, it doesn't matter or not whether you identify as an alcoholic or not. I think it's great for people to lessen their drinking. I, however, do identify as an addict and alcoholic. Like I make no argument that I'm not, but I do think it is still slightly different to go in with that. When people ask me about it, I still feel like, oh, this person's going to judge me. Like, and it has come back to bite me in the ass in a couple of instances where people have held it against me. And it sucks that it's still like that. But on the other hand, like there are real consequences when you are an alcoholic, like an active alcoholic or an addict. So all that to say, yes, to answer the question, I think that the pendulum has swung so far. And the thing that I say when people ask like why I don't drink, I don't get the question as much as I used to. but I make a joke and I say, like, trust me, you don't want me drinking, because if I get drunk, I'm going to end up trying to make out with your husband and you. And so it's just going to be ugly and embarrassing. So, and that usually either makes them laugh or they have big eyes and they don't ask me anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of do the opposite. So I just say, yeah, I used to love drinking and I quit and I feel better. Like I identify as a person who no longer drinks in the same way I used to identify as a red wine girl. Like I used to be like, I'm a mom, I'm a director of marketing, I live in Seattle, I'm a red wine girl, whatever it is. And so it's part of my identity now, but it's not all of my identity. I know it isn't for you either.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when people ask me, I very much, I say, yeah, I feel better without it. It was really hard for me to not drink. I don't think about it anymore.
Yeah.
And by the way, this substance is addictive. Mm-hmm. And anyone who drinks enough or for long enough or is in that social world will go down the road of becoming, emotionally, habitually, or physically dependent on it.
I'm curious about that with you. I didn't have any physical withdrawal symptoms. Did you?
Just hangovers, the same.
No, but when you quit.
Always had. No, I know.
Oh, okay.
No, I didn't have a ton of physical withdrawal symptoms. I did note, I slept terribly, but I always slept terribly when I was drinking. I think I had my first good night of sleep on day 12. It took me like a month to feel as happy as I now identify as my new baseline. I didn't realize the degree to which I had been more anxious and less happy than I could have been. And that's part of the substance. But, like you said, then you have all the underneath stuff. And for me, it was anxiety. I didn't love my job and I felt a ton of pressure in it and didn't love my boss. And so a lot of that was boundaries. A lot of that was taking some time to figure out what I wanted to do. The other thing I would say about, we talked about habit change generally. Anything you want to do, you can find a group. I think that a big shift has been Instagram and TikTok. We always talk about the negative aspects of it, and those are totally real. I'm a big fan of curating your feed towards positivity and people you resonate with. And at the same time, you can put in, hashtag sober talk or hashtag alcohol free, or find influencers or just people who really inspire you for all the benefits of whatever change you want to make. And that's a very easy way with a New Year's resolution. Like if you want to start meditating, fill your feed with people who have practices and celebrate that and reminders. Or if you want to work out more, or if you want to drink more water, you can find inspiration for anything. And the more it's front and center and celebrated, the more likely you are to continue.
Yeah. What do you find is the most, what are people's general takeaways at the end of dry January? Are there some patterns that you see?
Oh, yeah. I think that obviously a lot of people go back to drinking.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully they do it more mindfully. Unless they come in with a specific goal of taking a longer break from alcohol, which I'm a huge advocate of. Once you stop drinking for a period of time, you can't unknow the difference you feel. When you drink, and the Huberman podcast did a fantastic episode on this, because he talked about alcohol in the mind and body, but specifically people who drink within the quote unquote recommended amount, which is 1 drink a day for women or 7 per week, 2 for men. He looked at that and talked about the fact that I hate the recommended amount, because other countries are changing that to no amount of alcohol is recommended. We all do things all the time that isn't good for us, and we have personal choice. And, I completely support that, but it is not, good for you or innocuous in any way. But, the fact that even 1 glass of wine for women interrupts, like decreases your sleep quality by 24%. If you have 2, it's 42%. Alcohol spikes your cortisol, which is your stress hormone. So you actually do, for real, feel more anxious when you drink. Dopamine Nation was a fantastic book by Dr. Anna Lemke. It takes 30 days for your dopamine, your happy hormone, and your serotonin, which does mood regulation, to even out, because alcohol spikes your dopamine so high, it really suppresses your natural level of both of those. So within 30 days, you will realize that you can have fun without drinking. You'll wake up feeling more refreshed, sometimes than you have in years. You will realize that there are other things to do on Friday and Saturday nights, and even Saturday and Sunday mornings, because you aren't dragging. You will have more clarity, less brain fog. So even if you choose to go back to drinking, and people are doing it, there's also this mindful drinking movement. Every time you have a hangover, every time you don't, have a headache, every time you said you were going to go hiking on your vacation in Hawaii, and instead you had too many cocktails and didn't do it, you will know that it's because of the alcohol, and that gives you really good information.
I think some of those truths are so hard to actually admit. But I'm with you. We're going to take one more break. When we come back, I want to tell you an anecdote about my own anxiety and drinking. Be right back. I have definitely been in that place where my paycheck ran out before the next one got here. Life doesn't happen bi-weekly, so why should payday? The money you earn can be in your hands today with Earnin. Earnin is an app that gives you access to your pay as you work, up to $100 per day or up to $750 per pay period. Just download the Earnin app and verify your paycheck. Then access up to $100 a day as you work and leave an optional tip. Any money you access plus tips are automatically repaid from your next paycheck. You can use Earnin to pay for a girls' night out, a last-minute gift for a loved one, or even summer camp for the kids. Make Earnin a part of your financial routine and join Earnin's over 3.5 million customers who say things like, when I think about Earnin, I think about financial stability, security. It gives me a lot of peace of mind. Download Earnin today, spelled EARNIN, in the Google Play or Apple App Store. When you download the Earnin app, type in noise under podcast when you sign up. It really, really helps the show. Noise under podcast. Subject to your available earnings, location, daily max, and pay period max. See earnin.com/TOS for details. Earnin is a financial technology company, not a bank. Bank products are issued by Evolve Bank and Trust, member FDIC. Today's podcast is sponsored by MIDI Health. Ladies, are you over 40 like me and dealing with hot flashes, insomnia, brain fog, moodiness, some vaginal dryness, or weight gain? Don't just accept it as part of aging. These symptoms are often linked to hormonal changes during perimenopause and menopause. At MIDI Health, they get it. Their experts know what you're going through and how to help. MIDI clinicians are menopause specialists offering safe, effective, FDA-approved solutions. And guess what? MIDI Care is covered by insurance. So stop pushing through it alone. Schedule a virtual visit and dive deep into your unique symptoms and health background. You'll walk away feeling heard and with a plan to start feeling better. Visit MIDI Health today and reclaim your well-being. You deserve to feel great. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com. joinmidi.com. Okay, so what I realized when I quit drinking was that, well, and I didn't realize this until just a couple of years ago. So I was a late diagnosed ADHD, and what I learned from that, which I think a lot of my listeners learn, what I learned from that is that, we're dopamine deficient. We're constantly chasing it. I think that's another reason that I loved drinking so much. But I think one of the things was that my anxiety has lessened, but it wasn't necessarily, I don't know. I haven't really pieced it together that it was the drinking, and I'm sure that had a lot to do with it. getting sober forced me, and I use that word intentionally because I went kicking and screaming, Casey. I didn't want to learn how to have more healthy coping mechanisms. Drinking was so much easier, like I'm using air quotes because like in the long run, it wasn't, but it was such an easy fix just to grab those beers or that bottle of wine. But to learn more healthy coping mechanisms, like having hard conversations, like making sure that I got enough exercise and did all those things that everybody tells us to do, getting enough water, getting enough sleep, putting good foods into my body, and breathing techniques and like all of that stuff helped my anxiety so much that now, even through perimenopause, which I know can spike people's, women's anxiety, my anxiety levels are probably about 10% of what they used to be when I was in my 20s and 30s.
Wow.
And I attribute it to learning how to cope with life. And that 10%, because anxiety, it's how my brain is wired. So sometimes I'll just wake up with it and I'm like, well, it's an anxiety day. And like my body and brain are just anxious. And I just have learned to ride the wave, and it dissipates. It usually only will last for one day and it's gone. But that's really what I attribute it to, is being forced, as when I quit drinking, to being forced to learn more healthy coping mechanisms because I couldn't drink anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I resonate with that so much, Andrea, because I also went kicking and screaming. I had thought about it and worried about it, my drinking, for years. I mean, when my son was 6 months old, I read a book and was like, oh, damn, I may have an issue with alcohol. And I stopped for the first time when he was 5 years old and the second time when he was 8 years old. So this was not something I wanted to do. It literally was the worst case scenario of my life.
Last ditch effort.
Right? Nothing else was working. And I agree with you in terms of forcing you to find other ways to deal with. I was an anxiety person too. Mm-hmm. I had to go to therapy. I started working out just to get that anxious energy out of my body. I, full disclosure, took anti-anxiety meds. Mm-hmm. I had taken them before, but when you're drinking, they always tell you not to drink, but I was like, yeah. They're just trying to cover mm-hmm. themselves. No, mm-hmm. actually, it works better. So all of that stuff. The other thing I would say is I had to put down boundaries and do less and protect my time, which is hard to do if you're a high achieving multitasker.
Yeah.
But a lot of women who have too much on their plate, we go. And then we get home and we're like, all right, I have 2 hours to relax. And we use alcohol to downshift really fast. And you can also multitask when you're drinking, right? Once you have kids and you work, you almost have no time till you go to bed. So you're like, well, I can drink while playing Candyland or Legos.
Yeah.
And you have to get it out of your body until you can see the impact. And I've heard that about meditation and all the different things you can do to improve your life. Mm-hmm. But I've tried to be like, okay, I'm going to work out and meditate and cut back on processed foods. And I never do it. So for my New Year's resolution, I'm going to keep it simple. Like I'm going to start drinking X amount of water a day, or I'm going to do breath work every day for 4 minutes. I mean, and then build on that.
Yeah. I want to say this too. For anybody, and this goes beyond drinking. So this isn't just drinking. I think, when you're talking about all those things that we're supposed to do that are sometimes feel kind of high level, like the regular meditation, for me now, it's stretching has to also be in there because I have a 48-year-old body and I don't even I just go on walks. Like sometimes I lift weights. I'm actually in a moment where I'm not lifting weights, but I tell my clients this all the time, like the people that you see online who are, at least they seem, and I believe a lot of these people, they seem like they're killing it with their goals, especially their fitness and nutrition and kind of self-care goals. They do that for a living. So yes. They eat and live and breathe it, sort of like me in personal development. It seems like I have it all dialed in. I mostly do because it's literally my career. So I have the luxury of being around it all the time. And it's the same with these people who are, influencers or whatever. So the reason that I say that is because like, go easy on yourself.
Yeah.
I personally, when it comes to fitness and eating well and all that stuff, I go through seasons. I do really well for a while, sometimes months and months. And then it slowly starts to dissipate. And then I usually get kicked in the face because, metaphorically, of course. But like I got my Hashimoto's diagnosis a couple of years ago. I had to like change some things about the way I worked out and the way that I ate. And I did. And I felt so much better for a long time. And then the peanut M&Ms crept back in. And I found myself like several days in a row going, why does my body hurt so much? Like I shouldn't be hurting this much. And it was the same physical symptoms I had before. And I'm like, oh, I'm having a flare up. Like that's what this is. And so then I'm kind of, sometimes you have to accept that you will ebb and flow, and it doesn't make you a bad person or like that you have terrible willpower or that you're a failure. It's just how as soon as I accepted that it was just seasons. And sometimes I'm going to pay a consequence that's going to bring me back to the quote, the healthy habit. I'm so much nicer to myself and my life is so much better. I'm like not as hard on myself.
Yeah.
I like that so much better.
Okay. I love so many things you said. First of all, I'm 48 too, and I don't quite know how that happened, but your body, there are physical issues, right? That you don't realize. Like I used to go running without a second thought. And now I've got like a detached hip labrum tear. Yeah. I mean, it's horrible. I can't run anymore.
I tried just the other day. My right knee was like, absolutely not. I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'll just walk.
And I completely agree with you about the online influencers. Like that is their entire job. And a lot of times they have people who are supporting them.
Yeah, teams. Mm-hmm.
Yes,
sponsors
teams supporting them in being the way they are. And, totally respect that, but it is not attainable for everyone. And there are seasons. But what I love about you, what you said as well about your eating with the way you feel, I love peanut M&Ms. That and white chocolate are my go-tos when I'm like, I need a sugar hit. Yeah. And I somehow convince myself that like peanut M&Ms, you get a little protein too. Exactly. So like definitely.
Some fat and protein,
but because you've done that, like with anything, how you feel. Mm-hmm. You realize that it's not that this is you and you will always feel this way and it's something you need to live with, or that you need to like use an unhealthy coping mechanism to just numb out. You're like, oh, I know that when I did that, I felt better and I know how to do it. So either way, it's helping you.
And it's listening to your body, which I think, or your intuition, which actually got me sober. It was the listening to my intuition, and listening to my body now is a lot easier. And I think it just comes from like some wisdom, being in your late 40s. Well, thank you so much for being here. We need to wrap up. And I just want to ask you before we go, is there anything that you want to circle back to or add on to so you can feel complete?
Yeah, the only thing I would say is with any New Year's resolution, and I don't, New Year's resolutions, again, they're sort of a double-edged sword. But with quitting drinking or anything else, I find that the hardest part is drawing a line in the sand, picking a start date that you don't continually say, oh, I'll start on Monday, or, oh, but I have this wedding or this trip coming up, so I'll just start after that. So just begin, and anything that helps you begin is great with an area of your life you feel will improve you for the new year. And then just find some people who are doing the same thing and start small.
Okay, thank you. And so I know you have a dry January starting soon for people who are listening to this, at least, the week that it comes out. So, and where can people learn more about that and more about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. My website is hellosomedaycoaching.com. I have a completely free guide to your first month alcohol free. And I have a course called the Sobriety Starter Kit. But, the guide is a great place to start. And I also have a podcast that Andrea's been on.
I have been a guest on.
Yeah, I have almost 200 episodes, and it's about more than just quitting drinking. We've had episodes on perfectionism and imposter syndrome and anxiety and actually ADHD, because there's a big link to using alcohol. And I think people who have ADHD are 5 times more likely to struggle with addiction, which is amazing. But Andrea was on and we were talking about speaking your own mind and owning your own strength in the society and culture we live in. So yeah, find me there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And listeners, you know how grateful I am that you choose to spend your time with me and my guests. So thank you again for that. And remember, it's our life's journey to make ourselves better humans and our life's responsibility to make the world a better place. Bye for now. Hey, did you know there's free secret podcast episodes waiting for you that are not part of my regular podcast feed? Yes, AndreaOwen.com/free. And you just sign up. You get a link sent to you. It's very secret. It's like a secret club. We don't have a secret handshake. Don't worry about that. But it's these motivating podcast episodes that I made for you. They're under 20 minutes each. There's 3 of them. They're for wherever you are in your life. So head on over there and grab them. They range from really supporting you and seeing you where you are and being compassionate, all the way to giving you a giant kick in your ass and telling you how amazing and gorgeous and phenomenal you are. So AndreaOwen.com/free and get your hands on that free podcast feed.
I'd like to introduce you to the Minimalist Moms podcast. It's hard enough being a mom, and the last thing you need is stress from too much stuff and an overcrowded schedule. For too long, I lived with the mindset that bigger was better, and the more I added to my life, instead of feeling better, I felt overwhelmed. It was time for a radical new mindset. Less is more. I'm not into extremes. I didn't throw everything away. My brand of minimalism is more about adding than subtracting. Get rid of the excess to make room for what you love. In other words, it's about living life with purpose. I hope you'll listen in, and my guest and myself can inspire you to think more and do with less. The Minimalist Moms podcast, available wherever you listen to podcasts.